The last time Grant saw me, I was pregnant with twins and he was walking out the door. 13 years later, he found me at a national academic final and asked, "Laura, what are you doing here?" I did not answer. Then he saw two boys heading backstage and his face changed. When their names were called for gold, would he finally understand what 13 years of walking away had cost him? The lobby outside the main auditorium in Manhattan was already crowded when I heard his voice behind me. 13 years had passed, but I knew it before I turned around. "Laura, what are you doing here?" Grant stood a few feet away with Meredith and Connor beside him. He looked older, more polished, but the expression was familiar. It was the same look he used when something did not fit the picture he had already made in his head. Meredith glanced at my simple green dress, then at the guest badge hanging from my neck. I didn't realize this event was open to everyone. I looked at her. Apparently, it is. That was all. I did not explain why I was there. I did not mention the two boys waiting with the other finalists behind the stage doors. The strange thing about seeing someone who once broke your life apart is that your heart does not always race. Mine barely changed. That surprised me more than Grant's face did. Maybe that was when I understood how far away from him I had already gone. I had read the event program carefully before coming. Grant's company was listed as a sponsor for the reception and a scholarship fund. It had no role in judging, scoring, finalist selection, or award decisions. I had made sure of that before we left New Jersey. Grant was still looking at me when movement behind my shoulder caught his attention. Ethan and Owen crossed the far end of the lobby with a group of finalists. Grant stopped adjusting his cuff. His eyes followed them. Too long. The confidence left his face so quickly that I almost missed it. Meredith said his name once. Then again. Only then did he look back at her. I knew he had seen something familiar. Maybe it was Ethan's profile. Maybe the way Owen tilted his head when he listened. I did not help him figure it out. People who leave you sometimes seem to believe your life should remain exactly where they left it. When they find you standing somewhere they never expected you to belong, their surprise can say more than an apology ever could. An event coordinator stepped into the lobby. "Finalists for the Team Innovation Awards, please report backstage." Ethan and Owen turned toward me. I raised 2 fingers. It was our little signal, together. Both boys smiled and disappeared through the backstage doors. Grant saw it. This time, his face changed completely. I walked toward the auditorium without looking back. But his question stayed with me. "Why are you here?" 13 years earlier, he had asked me something very close to that. Back then, what he really wanted to know was why I was still standing between him and the life he believed he deserved. Back then, Grant and I were living in a small apartment in Queens where every grocery bill had to be planned before payday. Grant was trying to break into finance after several jobs had gone nowhere. I was doing technical editing from home, paying bills, cooking dinner, and reminding him that one bad month did not mean his life was over. When he fell short, I used my savings to cover rent. At the time, I called that marriage. Later, I realized I had been carrying more of it than I admitted. Meredith first appeared through one of Grant's business contacts. I knew she had money, connections, and access to rooms. Grant had been trying to enter for years. The changes came quietly. Restaurant charges appeared on our joint account. Business dinners ended after midnight. Grant changed the password on his phone. Then he began looking at my clothes and my work as if ordinary life embarrassed him. Once, when I questioned another late dinner, he told me, "You don't understand how this world works." I remember thinking that maybe he was right. That was how far I had bent myself. People often think betrayal begins when someone steps into another person's bed. I do not believe that anymore. Sometimes it begins earlier, when your sacrifices become invisible and their dreams start mattering more than your dignity. A few weeks later, I learned I was carrying twins. Not long after that, I learned the truth about Meredith. Grant did not beg for forgiveness. He spoke like a man explaining a business decision. He said he could not build a future while carrying everyone else. Then he looked at my still flat stomach. I can't build the life I'm trying to build with 2 babies and a marriage already falling apart. He also reminded me that I still had choices about the pregnancy. Something inside me went very still. The divorce moved quickly. Based on what he earned then, Grant agreed to the minimum support required. Years later, after his income changed, an attorney told me I could ask the court to review it. I never did. I kept the divorce decree, his emails, the messages, and my medical records. Not because I was planning revenge. My attorney had given me one piece of advice: keep records. Memory becomes an argument, documents don't. When Grant rolled his suitcase toward the door, he told me I would call once I realized I could not raise 2 babies alone. I did not argue. I closed the door. The next morning, half the closet was empty. For the first time in months, I no longer had to wonder what my husband was lying about. I only had to figure out how the 3 of us were going to survive. The morning after Grant left, I started doing math. Rent, groceries, medical appointments, 2 cribs, diapers I had not even bought yet. Within a month, I moved to a smaller apartment in New Jersey. It was not beautiful, but the rent was lower. The pregnancy was hard. Carrying twins turned ordinary things into work. Stairs felt longer. Sleep came in pieces. After Ethan and Owen were born, my life became even smaller. The next feeding, the next bill, the next deadline. The next 2 hours of sleep? If I was lucky. One night, both boys developed fevers. I drove them to the emergency room with 1 infant seat on each side of me. I remember the fluorescent lights and 1 baby crying while the other finally slept. A nurse looked past me and asked, "Is Dad on his way?" I needed 2 seconds. "No, it's just me." She nodded and kept working. I did too. There was no dramatic moment when I decided to become strong. Most of the time, strength looked like staying awake. At 2 in the morning, I sometimes edited technical reports with 1 boy asleep against my chest and my laptop beside me. I took more remote projects. Later, I studied instructional design at night. That led to educational materials, then more work through a teacher I knew. Nothing changed quickly, but things changed. I used to think financial independence meant having a lot of money. Those years gave me a different definition. Sometimes independence is knowing next month's bills will be paid without calling someone who humiliated you and asking for permission to survive. As the boys grew, they asked about their father. I never made Grant into a monster. He lives somewhere else, I told them. When you're old enough to ask harder questions, I'll give you honest answers. Children should not have to carry an adult's bitterness like a backpack they never chose. My goal stopped being proving Grant wrong. I wanted a home where my sons never believed being left meant they were unwanted. Years later, Ethan solved a math problem on the old whiteboard in our kitchen that I thought was beyond him. Owen studied it, then showed him another approach. They argued, then they laughed. Watching them, I realized the remarkable thing was not how smart they were. It was how much better they made each other. Before I tell you what happened, as the boys grew older, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. I did not know that night, watching them at that old whiteboard, that the way they learned together would one day put all 3 of us in the same room with Grant again. That old whiteboard stayed in our kitchen for years. So did the habit behind it. Ethan liked structure. He wanted numbers to line up, steps to make sense, and answers to be checked twice. Sometimes that made him too careful. He could spend 20 minutes fixing something that was already good enough. Owen was different. He wanted to know what a solution meant in real life. Who would use it? Who might be left out? Sometimes his mind ran in so many directions that I had to remind him to finish one idea before starting 3 more. They were not perfect. They argued over the bathroom. They forgot to take out the trash. They left cereal bowls in the sink like every other kid, and I was grateful for that. My own work changed slowly too. Technical editing led to instructional editing, that led to curriculum consulting. After a few years, I began helping with a small community tutoring program. Eventually, with several teachers and volunteers, we built Bright Path Learning Foundation. It was not some giant nonprofit with marble offices and television commercials. We helped local students with tutoring, refurbished laptops, school supplies, STEM workshops, and mentoring. That was enough. By then, I had moved us into a small townhouse. I had a retirement account. I had started college savings for both boys. I was not wealthy. I was stable. And after the years we had lived through, stability felt like wealth. Working in education taught me something I never forgot. Children know very quickly whether adults care about them learning or only care about them winning. From a distance, those two things can look almost identical. Up close, they create very different children. Ethan and Owen's competition project began at Bright Path. One afternoon, they watched several students wait almost an hour for access to 2 working computers. Some kids had tutors available when they did not need them. Others needed help but had no slot. The boys started asking questions. Soon, our kitchen table was covered with notes. They built a low-cost system that could help tutoring centers assign computer time, materials, mentor hours, and academic support based on actual need instead of whoever signed up first. It combined math, logic, design, and community impact. Months later, an email arrived. They had qualified for the National Academic and Innovation Finals in Manhattan. I read the message twice. Then I opened the event packet. Halfway down the sponsor list, I saw a name I had not expected: Caldwell Capital. My hands stopped on the trackpad. The program clearly stated that sponsors had no role in judging, scoring, finalist selection, or award decisions. Still, I emailed the coordinator and asked for written confirmation. She replied the same afternoon. I saved that email in a folder, not because I was afraid of Grant, because I would not let anyone question work my sons had earned. That night, I closed my laptop and told them we were going to New York as planned. I did not tell them who Caldwell Capital belonged to. I only knew this. If I pulled my sons from a stage they had earned because Grant might be there, then 13 years later, I would still be letting him decide where I was allowed to stand. So we went to New York. After the brief exchange with Grant in the lobby, I took my seat inside the auditorium and tried to focus on the stage. Grant and Meredith were several rows away with Connor between them. Meredith checked her phone, adjusted Connor's collar, searched for cameras, and typed messages with both thumbs. Once, I saw her point toward a photographer and remind Connor where to stand if his name was called. At first, I almost made the mistake of seeing him as part of her performance. Then I looked more carefully. Connor did not look spoiled. He looked tired. Before the contestants were called into the preparation area, he leaned toward Grant. His voice was low, but I was close enough to hear it. "What happens if I don't place?" Grant paused. "Just do your best," Meredith answered before Connor could. "You will place." His shoulders tightened. I had spent years teaching my sons not to judge people by appearances, yet for a moment, I nearly did exactly that to Connor. An expensive blazer did not mean the child wearing it had an easy life. He was not my son's enemy. He was another kid carrying adult expectations. The competition moved quickly after that. During the problem-solving round, Ethan reached a question that stopped him. His pencil hovered over the page. Owen glanced at him but did not jump in. Ethan took a breath, went back one step, and found his way through it. Later, one judge asked how their project would keep resources from going to the loudest families. Ethan explained the scoring model. Then Owen added that need should be measured by barriers, not by who asked first or complained the most. That answer changed the room. I felt proud, not because they looked brilliant, but because they listened to each other. More than once, I noticed Grant watching them. He stopped checking his phone. He stopped speaking to the people around him. When Owen tilted his head before answering another question, Grant suddenly sat straighter. I knew that gesture. By the time the finalists returned to their seats, Grant was looking at Ethan. Then Owen. Then me. It was not the look of an ex-husband seeing someone from his past. It was the look of a man who had found an answer he did not want to believe. The host stepped onto the stage. We'll begin with the individual recognition awards before announcing the overall innovation winners. I looked at Grant one last time. He was no longer watching the stage. He was watching my sons. The first awards were announced one by one. Connor received an honorable mention. That was still an achievement. He had reached a national final and earned recognition for his work. But when his name appeared on the screen, he did not smile. He looked down at the program in his hands. Meredith leaned toward him. "Don't cry. Cameras are still on us." I heard every word. For a moment, I forgot about Grant, the past, and even my own sons. I just saw a boy trying not to look disappointed in front of a room full of strangers. Some parents say they want their children to succeed. Sometimes what they really want is the feeling of succeeding through them. A child usually learns the difference on the day he does not win. Grant looked at Connor too. Something in his face softened. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Meredith started to rise, already looking toward an event staff member. Grant stopped her. "Leave it alone. It was a small thing. It did not erase anything." But it was the first time that evening I saw him protect a child from an expectation instead of adding another one. Then the host began introducing the final award. He spoke about exceptional scores, practical design, teamwork, and community impact. My hands became cold. Those words sounded familiar. Ethan squeezed Owen's hand. Owen looked toward me. I placed my hand against my chest. Steady, together. The same signal we had used for years. The finalists' names appeared on the large screen behind the stage. Then I saw our last name, Bennett. Grant saw it too. He turned toward me. His lips moved. Laura. That was all. He did not need to ask the question forming between us. Before opening the final envelope, the host reminded everyone that projects had been scored independently under the same judging rubric, and that sponsors had no role in award decisions. Meredith kept her eyes on the stage. I looked at Connor again. If my boys won, it would not mean he had failed. He had already done something difficult just by reaching that room. The truth being tested that night was not about one child defeating another. It was about adults who believed money, pressure, and status could replace patience, responsibility, and presence. The auditorium became quiet. The host lifted the final envelope. Through the microphone, I heard the paper tear open. A spotlight moved across the finalist section. Ethan reached for Owen's wrist. Grant sat completely still a few rows ahead of me. Meredith leaned forward, and I remember thinking that in a few seconds, one name would be read aloud. I did not know yet that the moment about to come would do more than change our evening. It would force Grant to look directly at 13 years he had spent pretending did not exist. The overall gold award goes to Ethan Bennett and Owen Bennett. The auditorium broke into applause. My hands went cold. Ethan and Owen stood and walked toward the stage together. A few rows ahead, Grant did not clap right away. He looked at them, then at me. The host praised their scores, their teamwork, and the practical value of a project designed to help students in underfunded programs. The medals were placed around their necks. A photographer called for them to face the cameras. They did not. Both boys searched the audience. For me, I stood and pressed my hand to my chest. Steady, together. They smiled. Grant saw it all. Grant was less than 50 feet from his sons, yet in one of the biggest moments of their childhood, neither boy thought to look for him. I once thought the worst punishment was watching his children succeed without him. I was wrong. The deeper loss was realizing they had built a world where he had never had a place. After the ceremony, Meredith came toward me. Connor stayed behind her. So this is what this was about? You brought them here because you knew Grant would be here. My sons qualified for this competition. Grant has nothing to do with why we're here. She glanced toward the boys. You disappear for 13 years, then show up with 2 boys who look exactly like him? You knew what the press would do. Then she suggested lawyers should review whether my sons had received special treatment because Grant's company was a sponsor. Be very careful what you accuse my children of. I sent Ethan and Owen to stand with the event coordinator. This was not their fight. Then Grant turned to me. Why didn't you ever tell me about them? I stared at him. 13 years. And that was still his question. I opened one archived email on my phone. Do not contact me about the pregnancy again. Whatever you decide is your responsibility. I held out the screen. I told you. You answered. Grant said nothing. Meredith started to speak. I locked my phone. If either of you plans to suggest publicly that my sons cheated, manipulated this competition, or came here for money, speak to my attorney first. I had not kept that email to humiliate Grant. I kept it because a lawyer taught me that the truth does not always need to be shouted. Sometimes it only needs to be preserved long enough that no one can rewrite your history for you. Grant looked toward Ethan and Owen. Then he started walking toward them. If you are still listening, please tell me how satisfied you are with the story in the comments below, so I know there are still people walking with me through this journey. Your presence is the greatest encouragement I have to keep telling you. The final part. Then Grant called one of my sons by name for the first time in his life. Owen. Owen turned around. The way he looked at Grant told me the gold medal would not be the hardest thing Grant carried home that night. Owen turned around. Grant stopped a few feet away from him. For most of the evening, he had carried himself like a man used to being recognized before he introduced himself. That confidence was gone now. His shoulders were lower, his hands hung at his sides. He took one step forward. Owen gave the smallest shake of his head. No anger, no scene, just a boundary. Grant stopped. I just want 5 minutes. Owen looked at me. There was a time when I would have answered for my children because I thought protecting them meant making every difficult choice myself. Motherhood had taught me something harder. Sometimes protection means giving a child enough safety to choose. That's his decision, I said. Owen looked back at Grant. Not tonight. Ethan stood beside his brother. He did not move closer to Grant, and he did not move away. The boys were not cruel. They were simply not willing to pretend that shared blood had created 13 years of memories. Blood can explain a connection. It does not automatically create a relationship. Grant lowered his eyes. Then he nodded. He did not argue. For the first time that night, wanting something did not give him the right to have it. We went home. I did not post the medals online. I did not answer reporters asking questions about the boys and Grant. Instead, after the boys went to bed, I opened the folder I had kept for years. I sent my attorney the old emails, the divorce records, the coordinator's written confirmation that sponsors had no role in judging, and the documents showing how Ethan and Owen had qualified. She called me the next morning. Her advice was simple. Say nothing publicly unless Meredith continued making false claims. She sent one short letter to Meredith's media representative. It asked them to stop making or repeating any false suggestion that two minors had cheated, received special treatment, or entered the competition for financial gain. That was enough. I did not need a lawsuit. I needed the truth protected. Winning had not given me a reason to hurt anyone. It had only reminded me to protect what my sons had earned. The next morning, Ethan came into the kitchen carrying his medal. He set it beside my coffee cup and sat across from me. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Mom, how much of what happened back then do we actually know? I looked at both of my sons. It was time to tell them everything. The next morning looked almost insultingly normal. There was cereal on the table, coffee in my mug. Yesterday's white shirts were hanging over the back of a chair, waiting to be washed. The two gold medals sat beside a stack of unopened mail. Outside our apartment, people were already talking about the competition, the photographs, and Grant. Inside, it was just the three of us. Ethan looked at me first. What really happened with him? I sat down across from both boys. There was no reason to soften the truth anymore. Grant knew I was pregnant. He knew there were two babies. He chose to leave. And during the 13 years that followed, he did not take part in raising them. I gave them those facts without adding a speech about what kind of man that made him. Then I said something I had wanted them to understand for years. You don't owe me anger on my behalf. Owen looked down at his hands. Ethan stayed quiet. I told them they were allowed to decide for themselves what happened next. They could refuse to see Grant. They could speak to him. They could ask questions. They could change their minds later. None of those choices would be a betrayal of me. I had seen divorces continue for decades because parents turned their children into witnesses for old pain. I never wanted to win a war that had already ended by forcing my sons to keep fighting in it. Owen finally looked up. Would he be here if we hadn't won? There was more hurt than anger in his voice. I did not give him an easy answer. That's a question he'll have to answer with his actions. Ethan was quieter. After a moment, he asked, "Did he ever try to find us before yesterday?" I answered as honestly as I could. Not that I know of. That was all. Sometimes one sentence carries enough weight by itself. We stayed at the table for a while after that. No one rushed to fill the silence. By afternoon, the boys had gone back to their usual routines. Then an email appeared in my inbox. It was from Grant. No flowers had arrived. No gifts. No promises about money. The message was one line. May I come speak to you alone? I won't approach the boys unless they ask me to. I read it several times. For 13 years, Grant had been a man who made decisions and expected other people to live with them. This was different. He was asking. I agreed to one conversation, not because I was ready to forgive him. I wanted him to understand exactly what place he had in our lives now, and what place he did not. 3 days later, Grant stood outside my front door. There was no driver waiting downstairs, no assistant, no flowers. I let him in and pointed to a chair at the kitchen table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Grant apologized. He said he knew there was no excuse for what he had done. He said seeing Ethan and Owen had forced him to face things he had spent years avoiding. I believed the regret was real. Then he started talking about college funds, private schools, tutors, trust accounts, connections that could open doors for the boys. I listened until he finished. You're still trying to solve 13 years with a checkbook. Grant looked down at his hands. He said he only wanted to provide for his sons. They needed a father when they were sick at 2 in the morning. They needed one at kindergarten orientation. They needed one when Ethan broke his wrist. They needed one when Owen was terrified before his first public presentation. I paused. You can't fund those moments retroactively. Grant did not argue. People with money are often taught that every problem has a price. Some debts do not work that way. They are paid with time, patience, and the willingness to accept that the person you hurt does not owe you comfort while you are trying to feel better about yourself. The room went quiet. Then Ethan came out of the hallway to get water. He noticed Grant and stopped. For a second, nobody moved. Ethan filled a glass, set it in front of Grant, and said, "Here you go, Mr. Caldwell." Grant looked at him. I could tell he had hoped for something else, but he did not correct him. He only nodded. "Thank you." Ethan went back down the hallway. Grant stared at the glass for several seconds before touching it. I told him what would happen if he wanted any chance of knowing the boys. No surprise visits. No expensive gifts. No money handed directly to them. No press. No using their names to repair his image. And no asking either boy to call him dad. Any contact would happen because Ethan and Owen chose it. Not because Grant wanted it. He agreed. That mattered. Not because it erased the past, but because for the first time, he seemed to understand that making amends was not about reclaiming a place he had lost. He had never built that place to begin with. He would have to start from nothing. When he stood to leave, Grant stopped at the door. "Is there anything I can do right now?" I looked at him. "Yes." He waited. "Go home and look at the child who's already been living under your roof, Connor." The child I meant was Connor. I did not know exactly what Grant did after leaving my house that day. Most of what I learned came later, through things he told me and changes I could see for myself. He started by removing some of Connor's tutoring sessions. Not all of them. Just enough to give the boy room to breathe. Grant asked what he actually enjoyed, not what would look good on an application. Connor told him he liked design, building things, and photography more than academic competitions. Grant also helped him find a counselor after Connor asked for one. One story Grant told me stayed with me. For the first time, he went to pick Connor up after school himself, instead of sending a driver. Connor got into the car, looked at him, and asked, "Am I in trouble?" Grant said that question bothered him for days. It showed him how much of their relationship had been built around correction, pressure, and fear. Things with Meredith did not change overnight. They began living separately. They tried counseling. Months later, they decided to move forward with a formal separation. I never needed Meredith to become some great villain in the story. What she had to face was simpler and probably harder. She had spent years using Connor's achievements to protect her own image, while telling herself she was only trying to give him the best. As for Grant, the thing that made me begin to believe he might actually be changing was not his apology to me. People can apologize when they lose something they want. What caught my attention was that he began changing the way he treated a child, even when doing so gave him no advantage with me, Ethan, or Owen. That felt different. With my sons, Grant stayed careful. Once in a while, he sent a short message through me. He congratulated them on schoolwork. He did not post about them. He did not send expensive gifts. And if they did not respond, he stopped. Owen kept his distance. Ethan softened first. He asked Grant a few small questions about family history, a math book, and something Grant had studied years earlier. He still never called him Dad. Grant did not ask him to. That mattered too. Over time, I saw the change for what it was. Grant was slowly moving from regretting what he had lost to taking responsibility for the people he still had a chance to treat better. Months later, on a Saturday afternoon at Bright Path, I looked up and saw him walking through the gate. No suit, no photographer, no assistant, just Grant, carrying an old cardboard box full of books in both hands. Grant carried the box into Bright Path and set it on one of the long tables near the workshop room. Inside were old books on math, logic, and problem solving. Some had worn covers. A few had notes in the margins. He looked at me. "Could you use these?" I checked the first few titles. "We probably can." That was all. There was no check tucked inside. No request to put his name on a classroom. No plaque. No photographer waiting outside. Just a box of books. Ethan and Owen came in a few minutes later after helping another volunteer move supplies. Owen nodded at Grant. He was still careful around him, but the coldness was gone. Ethan opened one of the books. "These notes are yours?" Grant smiled a little. "From college." Ethan turned several pages and started asking about one of the problems. For the first time, I watched them connect over something that had nothing to do with money, medals, reputation, or even blood. Just curiosity. Before Grant left, Ethan closed the book. "We have an applied reasoning workshop next Saturday." Grant looked at him. Ethan added, "You can sit in if you want." Grant did not ask what that meant. He did not try to turn the invitation into something bigger. "I'd like that." Then he looked at me. There was nothing romantic in that moment. We were not rebuilding a marriage. We were acknowledging something simpler. The past was still there. 13 years could not be returned. But what Grant did from that day forward still mattered. For a long time, I thought my victory would be living well enough that he would regret leaving me. Later, I understood that even that would have meant letting Grant decide the value of my life. I did not win when Ethan and Owen received gold medals. I won much earlier. I won when I stopped needing the man who left me to come back and prove that I had always been worth loving. The boys' medals eventually ended up on a bulletin board at Bright Path. They hung beside a workshop calendar, student photos, an unpaid printer invoice, and a handwritten reminder to order more paper. Those medals had once made an entire auditorium stand. Now they rested among ordinary things. And somehow, that felt right. Achievement can belong to one day. Character belongs to a lifetime. Grant's regret did not make me valuable. My son's success did not make me valuable. My value was already there when I got up alone, protected my children, built a life, and refused to let bitterness decide who I became. If you were in my place, would you leave that small door open for Grant after 13 years? Or do you believe some doors should stay closed once someone chooses to walk through them? And most of all, were you satisfied with the way this story ended? Tell me what you think.